We have 4 simple rules. Number 1, we don't discuss politics, ever. Number 2, this is not a religious channel, and while you might hear people say, God bless you, or I'm going to pray for you, or I wouldn't have gotten through this without my faith, that's fine. What's not fine is to say, my God is better than your God, or here's why you're not getting into heaven. It's not going to fly. Number 3, we believe wholeheartedly if you can't control your tongue, then you can't control your life. So while on board, there's not going to be any cursing in the live chat, period. And number 4, there is no room for mean people on the lifeboat. Because we discuss very sensitive things from people's past in our group setting, we got to protect those people. The only way they feel confident and comfortable discussing those things is in an environment that is free of trolls and mean people. So if you're a mean person or you're a troll, we're going to block you for life. And if your account happens to be less than 24 hours old, we're probably a little suspicious right from the word go. Why? Well, because there are people in this world who enjoy being cruel solely for the sake of being cruel. It's not going to fly here. But if you're here because you're trying to get sober and live your best life, then you might find that the lifeboat is just that, a lifeboat. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and we will see you on deck.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Tommy Scoville. You're on the lifeboat. And squirrel's going in the bathroom. Second time in like 5 minutes. I don't know what's up with this cat. It's probably because she wakes to treats. So, if you saw the thumbnail, I don't know why we call them thumbnails. Anyway, if you saw the thumbnail, the clicking talk, I remember me telling you that there are certain words I just can't seem to say. The clock at a 4:45 seemed appropriate, since that's about the time I'm starting these shows recently. Sorry, guy cracks me up. Last night's video got more people that reached out to me afterwards than any video I've done in a very, very long time, which is very cool. I love that. The vast majority of people who talked about last night's show made it really evident that we got a huge crew of people currently at base camp. We talk about the base camp concept constantly. When you eliminate chemicals from your life, when you begin to start the process of becoming the sober you, we call it base camp for a really obvious reason. Come here, Cap. And the obvious reason is life starts at that day. Now, for a lot of people, there's a difficult transition process of going from I use chemicals to cope to I use activities to cope. I use relationships to cope. I use connections to cope. But once we get to that point, once we get to that spot, Equus, good to see you. Glad that you're here. Once we get to that point, that base camp, the clock begins to tick. If we don't engage in the very early moments of that clock ticking, then we start going in the wrong direction. We start heading into relapse instead of moving forward in life. For some people, they manage to stay at base camp for life. And this is a tragedy of sobriety. This is one of the reasons that I always sort of fought off the concepts that are taught by some other forms of sobriety, where the concentration is on the past and not the future. Once we can eliminate this crap from our lives, we need to start concentrating on the future. I beat the drum about certain things over and over and over again. And there are people full of hope. Good to see you. Thank you for the song. I started my day with that. One of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard. Not sure who sings it, but it literally sounded like an angel. So it's time to get into the nuts and bolts of this, because apparently I'm not doing a good job of sort of designing that. I said last night that if you're not picking up one of these puppies every single day of your life, that you're probably failing. And some people ask questions about that. Some people seem to get the concept. Let's really get to the nuts and bolts of this. I wish you could see my view right now, because the cat is literally posing with the wrong end of her body right where I should be staring at the camera. Get that pencil or pen in your hand today. Today, when the lifeboat is over this morning, put the pen to the paper and set a list of goals down today. No farting around, no talking about someday. Today. When we disconnect from this show today, I want you to write down where you want to be 30 days from now, where you want to be 6 months from now, and where you want to be a year from now. If you want to hit that year goal, the 30-day goal and the 6-month goal are the important ones. Good girl. If you manage to hit those, then you are going to end up on the road to leaving base camp and starting to climb your Everest, starting to gain the life that we traded for chemicals years ago. The problem with drug addiction is literally that. That's it in a nutshell. We choose to trade the potential that we were born with. Everybody comes out with an unbelievable potential for what they are designed and destined to be. And somewhere along the way, as I spoke about last night, there's a snapshot that enters the brain, and that snapshot ends up getting more attention than it should. And in doing so, we get an indelible mark put on us. For some people, it's childhood abuse. For some people, it can literally be as simple as a lack of attention, too much attention, but something happens somewhere along the way. Now, in a perfect world, we identify that snapshot. Makes our process a whole lot easier. And you say, well, that's easier said than done, Tommy. It is a whole lot easier said than done. For some people, it is really obvious that if there's something so traumatic that it keeps you awake or wakes you up in cold sweats, that can be a driving factor, and it isn't difficult to peel the onion to get to that. It took me a long time to realize at what point I jumped the rails. What was it that pushed me? And I've been pretty open and honest with the lifeboat that for me, it was a feeling of inadequacy. I came to believe that I suffered from some pretty serious learning impairments. And this was based in fact. This was not something that I concocted. And a subconscious decision was made. There was never a period of time where I thought, you know what? I can't do A, B, and C. So I'm going to develop my ability to speak so that I don't have to do A, B, and C. This thing was the most intimidating thing to me in the world. My ability to take what was in here, transfer it down my right arm, and put it on a piece of paper was something that I couldn't do. And it made me feel stupid. It made me feel like I was broken. So the first couple of times I smoked weed, that feeling went away. And for me, it didn't make me whole by any stretch of the imagination, but it gave me the ability to not concentrate on it. Or if I started feeling a little stupid, I had a great excuse. So I started smoking every single day. Well, as time went on, I experimented with every other substance in the world, not realizing that I was looking for the one that was really going to get the job done. And a early ski injury did it. Once I tried opiates, I didn't care anymore. And I didn't care so completely that I blew off education across the board. And I started concentrating on the fact that I was a pretty damn good skier and that I was a pretty good athlete. And I barely got good enough grades to be allowed to compete. There were 106 people in my graduating class. I graduated 103 out of 106. Not a whole lot of effort put in. I got to college and all of a sudden my inabilities became glaring. Term papers, things that I just could not pull off. And once again, subconsciously, I engineered courses that I had the ability to get through without writing and managed to do just well enough to not look like I was stupid. And what I mean by that is that the courses that required the pen, I failed. The courses that didn't require the pen, I got A's. And by the time you teared them all out, I just looked like a really bad student who was probably partying too much. But that really ingrained that opiate part of my life. From that point on, there was no turning back until I got into the base camp part of this entire procedure. And somebody forced me to sit down and start journaling. And I said to the person, really honestly, I'm not really good at writing. I have a real issue with it. I can't get the thoughts in my head onto a piece of paper. And he said, well, the beautiful thing about that is no one else is ever going to read this. So who cares? If what you write down there, you understand, that's the only thing that matters. And I fought it. And I mean, I fought it. I lied to him because that was still in my nature. And he'd say, you journaling? Yeah, every night, every morning, And then one day he said to me, let me check out your journal. I said, well, we talked about the fact that was only going to be for me. He said, I'm not going to read it. I just want to see how many pages you've done. And I had to look at him and tell him that I didn't do it and that I was lying. And that was a pivotal moment in the rest of my development. Because for the first time in my life, the lie was so uncomfortable, I didn't have dope to make it feel okay. And that lie made me realize that I was not a good person. Here was a guy that was dedicating a ridiculous amount of time and effort to try to assist me so that I didn't spend the rest of my life with a needle in my arm. And I was looking him in the face and lying to him. And the guilt from that was overwhelming. So much so that I really contemplated getting high. I mean, really contemplated getting high. Spent days thinking about it. But I had the world's best sponsor who just basically said outright, thinking about getting high, right? Think about putting that pen to the paper. And I started writing. And eventually, that journaling got to a point where all of a sudden, I started to peel that onion. I started to remember the feelings that I was trying to avoid from the very beginning. And then another unique thing happened. I understood why I couldn't write the stuff down. I understood why my problem was the way it was. I couldn't do spelling was just atrocious. If I couldn't spell a word, I didn't try. If I didn't have the ability to spell that word, I didn't use that word. So my vocabulary never ended up on a piece of paper. Instead, I sounded like a third grader because that was the only words that I would use, are words that you learned to spell when you were about 8 or 9. And then I just stopped caring. I knew what the word was, no matter how bad I spelt it. And if you read my journal, you'll find that I use capital letters in some words, halfway through the word, 3/4 of the way through the word. As I write, it doesn't come out the way other people write. Sometimes I use capital letters, sometimes I use small case letters, but I just stopped caring because it wasn't for anybody else. It was for me. And I got addicted to trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And that journal became the most important weapon that I have ever had in my life. And then the writing got a little better. Penmanship, probably not so much, but the writing got a little better. And it got to a point where I was writing a couple hours a day. And then I became comfortable with things like setting goals. I literally met the greatest person ever. A guy that should not be doing life in prison because the number of people that he could help. But I'm not communicating this well enough to people, apparently. If you're at base camp, if you're chemical free, but you don't feel like you're moving forward, get the damn paper out and start writing. You don't have to think, okay, I gotta write what bothered me when I was a kid. You don't even have to start looking for it. The paper will pull it out of you. Stream of conscious, right? This is the concept. You put the pen to the paper and you just start writing. Now, if you say, Tommy, when I do that, nothing comes out. Okay, here you go. This morning, when you put the pen to the paper, you're going to write down where you want to be in 30 days, where you want to be in 6 months, and where you want to be in a year. And if you go, I don't know what that means. Okay, here's the deal. I'm 6'2". I weigh 230 pounds. In 30 days, I would like to be 10 pounds lighter than that. So I'm going to write that down. In 6 months, I'd like to be back where I was when I left prison, 205, and in good shape. And at a year, I don't want to be sick as often as I am. And I want to concentrate on 4 things that are going wrong health-wise that I avoid like the plague because it reminds me of my mortality and it's a painful subject. I don't talk about it a lot on the lifeboat, but I got some pretty serious health issues and I'm ignoring them. And a very close friend of mine yesterday pointed that out to me. He didn't do it on purpose. But I ignore problems. We all do this. But I don't seem to ignore a lot of problems anymore, except this one. So I'm going to start taking the bull by the horns and I'm going to get intimately involved in this whole procedure. Some of my medical problems are not things that can be fixed. But I'm going to start spending a hell of a lot of time figuring out how they can be dealt with and how I can stretch a good quality of life for as long as humanly possible. Amazingly, talking about this stuff all the time, writing in a journal for probably an hour a day, this is the part that I've been skipping. We all have a part that we've been skipping. Today, write down what you want to change. It might be money. It might be health. It might be the relationships with your family. Peel the onion of what in your life isn't where you want it to be. And an interesting thing will begin to happen. That onion will begin to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And you get these spider web kind of activities that go on where all of a sudden you start heading off in directions that you never had any intention of heading off into. And all of a sudden one day a light bulb is going to go on, big as hell. And like I said, for a lot of people, I work with somebody on a daily basis. No, I shouldn't say that. There is somebody I interact with on a daily basis who suffered vicious abuse when they were a kid. Physical, emotional, all of it. Horrendous. No onion to be peeled. That still needs to be dealt with. But there's no magnifying glass that is required to look at one's life to know that that is your issue. But for those of us who don't really understand why, You know what? I just liked partying. And the next thing you know, I was addicted. I said that for 3 decades. People would say to me, no, no, the drugs are a symptom. And I would go, BS. I like the way I felt when I got high. And then the next thing you know, I couldn't quit. And I believed it. I wasn't trying to cover anything up. I wasn't trying to play the game. I believed that. I just thought, you know what, man? Some people just party and they get out of control. Maybe that happens, but I don't think so. I really don't. The more that I've studied this, and the more that I have become intimately involved with the life of a crap load of people who are drug addicts, the more I come to realize that people tell me that, and I don't say to them BS like people used to say to me. I went the Q route. Okay. Start journaling. Start putting pen to paper. Start writing down your goals. Start doing all of these things. And you might find out that it wasn't just about partying that got out of control. There's something in there. And sometimes you got to find it. And sometimes it finds you. But it's never going to find you if you don't pick this up. And if you don't figure it out, you run the risk of spending the rest of your life at base camp. This is a sin of biblical proportion. To spend the rest of your life in neutral when you could be going 160 in the right direction is an awful concept. So today you're going to write down what you want to change in your life and why. And you say, well, that should be really obvious. Should it? Let's use me again. So I want to weigh 205. Well, you could say, well, I don't have a six-pack stomach anymore. And I really liked looking like I had a six-pack stomach, but that's not it. When I started doing this last night, and by the way, I have got this much sleep because I was journaling really late into the night. And then my daughter, who was about to have a birthday, had a day that she needed dead. So it was a long night. But when I started writing about why I wanted to, it's not because I want to look good in the mirror. I don't really need to look good in the mirror. I'm comfortable with who I am. And I'm not in the ballpark of morbidly obese. I'm a big dude. So I can carry this much weight and no one's ever going to notice. It's not like I put on 6 inches on my waist, right? I put 1 inch on my waist. I get big everywhere. I'm just a big guy. It's not about that. So what it's about is when I went from 205 and I put on 30 pounds is when everything started to unravel health-wise. When I left prison, I knew I had cerebral infarction and I knew I had all kinds of other health problems. I have had a couple of really serious things happen to me health-wise in my life that I've never shared on the boat. And I don't want the boat to become a magnet for people with the same physical problems that I have. I want this boat to be what it is. So I have avoided conversations about very serious medical problems that I've had in my life. Because I promise you, and if you understood exactly what they were, it would just turn this channel into something else. And I don't want that to happen. But when I was 205 pounds, those things were no longer affecting me. And when I got out into the real world, it's not the weight. It's the fact that I was doing a lot to remain healthy. See, when I wanted to weigh 205 pounds, I had to write down how I intended to get there because I weighed almost 278 pounds. And I didn't have a number in mind. I just wanted abs. And as I started to do that, health started to change. Things started to get better. But I had to put down a routine. That routine meant upping the amount of protein that I took into my body on a daily basis, which in prison is almost impossible because they just don't feed you protein. So I was buying hard-boiled eggs out of the kitchen. Right? Guys would go in there in the morning, sneak 5 or 6 dozen eggs into a pot of boiling water, and then smuggle them out in their socks. And no one cares that they're eggs. They care about how much protein they are. I was buying pints of milk, drinking about 18 of them a day because I knew how much protein there was in each one of them. And with the amount of working out I was doing, so I got to a point where I was trying to do 1 milligram of protein for every single, or is it 1 gram? 1 gram of protein for every pound in my body. In prison, they need to give you 30 grams of protein a day. I was up in that to 220, 230 grams of protein a day. And I was working out about 28 hours a week. Now I eat what I want. A lot of bread. I went 4 years without eating a piece of bread. You know what? I was a lot healthier. So for me, this isn't about wanting to look like the guy from the cover of Men's Journal. This is about wanting to live longer and wanting the quality of life for the amount of time that I've got left to be good. I wouldn't have figured that out if I didn't write down what the goals were and then why. And you don't flippantly write down anything. When you pick up the pencil, you make a commitment to yourself to be viciously, viciously honest. You understand? You got to get a license. You know what? Let's get that license, brother. It's a great goal. People, if things are jumping into your head right now, this is a good thing. This is a really good thing. Yesterday, somebody came by and looked at my house. Walked through, and you know the coolest thing in the world? This woman walked in and said, "Man, that is the greatest lawn I've ever seen. I love that lawn." I said, "I did that lawn. I put that in." She said, "You never have to water it?" I said, "Never have to water it." I think this woman's going to buy my house, which means that in 6 months, I don't intend to be in this state. So there's a lot that goes along with that. And there are some goals that have to be written down about it. I am writing down where I want my business financially. And it's not because I want a better car. It's not because I need the cash for something. See, I have come to realize that all of the reasons I wanted money my whole life were really dumb. Really. And the more of it I got, the dumber I got. I had a year I made $880,000 as a speaker. I was dumber that year than I've ever been because I was trying to buy happiness. And what I've come to realize is that what money buys you is time. If you don't have to spend a minute of any day of your life worrying about money, then you got a crap load of time on your hands to worry about things that are important, like family, friends, your goal, your legacy, your mission, your ripples. I'm close to where I want to be, but I do spend time having to worry about money. I don't want to be there in a year. You understand? I do not want to be there in a year. In a year, I do not want to owe money anything. Not a minute of my time is going to be owed to cash. I don't have enough time left on this planet to worry about money. None of us do. But you say, it's a lot easier. Let me tell you something. And I've talked about this on the air before. Figure out your nut. How much money you have to spend every single month on bills. Then divide up how much money that is and get envelopes and write car payment, write this, write that. And every single time you get a paycheck, you put money into every one of those envelopes. And at the end of the year, you will have a savings account. Sounds so simple, but I'm telling you, it's called the envelope system. Look it up. Look it up. It's life-changing. Life-changing. I've watched people who made a third of what I was making become financially stable because they didn't waste money anymore. We do things that we don't think about. Journaling will change that. See, I got out of prison and I'm, doing my life and things like that. And I started writing down what I do during the day because it's just not because that's something everybody should do in their journal. I just do that. Today I did this, today I did that. One day I was reading the journal and I realized that for about 90 consecutive days, I went to Starbucks and spent about $11 on coffee. $11 a day. 90 days of that. I don't go to Starbucks anymore. First of all, I don't like their politics a whole lot. But more importantly, if you're spending $70 a week on coffee, that's stupid. That is absolutely stupid. You know what $3,000 a year will do to your bottom line if you're not spending it at Starbucks? Without this thing, nothing good has happened in my life. When I picked this thing up, my life began to change. And every single day, my life has gotten better unless I didn't pick this up. The clock's ticking. And if you're sitting at base camp, pick up a damn pen and start setting down pipe dreams. Become goals. Goals are actionable. Pipe dreams are, someday I want to. Man, today is someday. Today is someday. Dreams are not actionable. Goals are actionable. Figure out which dreams you have are stupid. For real. And there are stupid dreams, believe that. If you dream of owning a Ferrari, that's stupid. If you dream of never having to worry about money and making sure that money is something you never have to waste a second on, you might end up with enough cash to buy a Ferrari. But owning a Ferrari is stupid. Take this from me, please. This is a stupid dream. And you go, oh man, I had one. It's a stupid dream. A tune-up will cost you $16,000. It's the dumbest investment in the entire world. Sometimes you need, if you're me, you just have to make a mistake to learn from a mistake. If you're a genius, you'll learn from somebody else's mistakes. Reliable transportation, that's a hell of a dream. That's a good one, right? That's a goal. It's actionable. Write it down. It's important to have reliable transportation. And I'll tell you something. If you had told me that there was a day in my life I was going to be happy driving a Prius, I would have laughed my keister off. I have a Toyota Prius, which gets ludicrous gas mileage. I get better than 50 miles to the gallon. And one of the first days that it really, really hit home, a guy said to me, "Can you pass anything in that?" And I said, "Yeah, gas stations." And it was one of those things that rolled off the tongue that I didn't think about until after I said it. But it's really funny. I pass gas stations all day long. Now, my mother, who I take care of, is in her 80s. So I got my mother's car, which may not have been the greatest decision in the world because I'm paying for it. And the Prius is paid off. However, I didn't want to see my mom's car get sold. My mom has a Porsche 911. So I said, I'll buy the Porsche. Now, was it a great decision? Maybe not. But I love it. And I don't drive it very often. It's a car that I take out when it's beautiful and I put the top down. Now, hindsight being 2020, maybe I should have sold the Moss car. Maybe. But you know what? You do have to do some things that are fun. And you can engineer your life in that way. Nothing makes me happier than wristwatches. Nothing. And I got $300,000 worth of them that I can wear. None of them are mine, with the exception of 2, right? 2 of them are mine. The rest of them are for sale. This is a Girard Perregaux. Beautiful watch. It's about 70 years old, and it is absolutely mint. And it was on my dream list someday to own. But it's a stupid thing to own. However, I get to wear them whenever I want. And then when somebody makes an offer on them that's enough money, I sell them. And then I buy another one that's on my list of watches that I would have liked to have owned at one time. And now there's 3 watches on that list that I have not had an opportunity to wear. None of them are mine. They're inventory. But I engineered my life in such a way that I get to play with things that I don't have to pay for, that I love. That borders on genius. Sorry, but it really does. And you know something? If you had said to me, you're going to, at 50, decide to change your entire life People, I threw out the only way I knew how to make a living at 50. At 50, I said, I'm not going to do public speaking anymore. And you know something? I never say anything on this show to impress somebody. I never say anything on this show for any other reason other than the fact that it is a essential part of the story. I could go on the road right now and make about 50 grand a month base. That's about the base pay for a public speaker. And then on top of that, you get commissions and bonuses. And so 600,000-ish right out the gate. That's a very good living. And I'm not going to make that selling watches. But the lifestyle that is attached to me being a professional public speaker, again, no way in hell can I do. And journaling proved that. All I was doing was Joe jobs until I was on paper, right? Out of prison for a year and a half, starting paper at a year and a half. 1 year of being on paper, I could travel full time. I could go wherever I needed to go to be a public speaker. So I was just working Joe jobs. And then I was going to go back to doing what I do. And I was going to make enough money in the first 18 months to maybe take a couple of years off or do whatever. But as I started to journal and I started to go through my past, the problem with, and if M. Hunt is here today, he knows exactly what I'm talking about. But if you've ever lived in hotel rooms, it is a dangerous life for someone who has been addicted to anything. It's a dangerous life. It brings so much baggage along with it, so much frustration, so much. It's exciting and great for about a year. Everything is new, everything is fun. And then one day you wake up wasted and you pick up the telephone and you call the front desk and say, this is going to sound really stupid. What city and state am I in? And right around that time, the drugs will have taken control because it's the only way to keep doing what you're doing. Speakers, and I don't know if rock stars say the same thing or musicians say the same thing, but you call it road rash. You get to a point where you're so burnt out from being on the road that people go, oh, good morning, Mr. Scoville. Welcome to the, shut up. What room am I in? Like I got to the point where I was just such a jerk. Honestly, like it was never that bad. But people would go, hey, welcome to the Westin. Yeah, great. Can I get a room key and can you do it quickly? Send up this, this, and this. And I got to a point where I was a jerk, and I was a jerk to everybody. I was a jerk to people who worked on airplanes because I lived in them. I can't do that life ever again. So that was a hit, right? There was my $500,000 a year job, my $600,000 a year job down the crapper. Reality set in. I can't do that. I'll be a drug addict. So I sat down at 50 and said, well, you got to do something. What are you going to do? You're going to start a new career at 50? And then I started going through journals and I started thinking about how much time I spent in parking lots waiting for somebody to deliver heroin. And as I was writing about that in the journal, I remember looking at Jack 5,000 times and said, you know what? I never should have been a speaker. I should have just played with watches. I'd be sitting in the car. I would go into the store because you always meet them at parking lots. So very often we would meet at the parking lot of a CVS, O'Reilly's, whatever. I would go into the magazine section and steal a Rob Report magazine because they have huge sections on watches. And I would sit in the car and read it. And I would read all the specs of the new Patek Philippe and go, man, if I could do this all over again, I would just play with watches. That's what I should have done. I should have just been a watchmaker. I should have played with watches. Nothing makes me happier. From the age of 12 on, I was just fascinated by them. And then it hit me. Why the hell not? I had money put up. I didn't have enough money put up to buy a house, but I had enough money put up to take a shot. And I just started looking at people that were selling watches. I thought if I could find 4 or 5 really good deals on watches and flip them, it could get the ball rolling. And instead, I found a guy in Canada that was selling an entire freaking collection at once. Did I have enough money? No. But I had 50% of it. And if you got 50% of it, getting someone to lend you 50% more, not a difficult thing to do. And it was the biggest risk I've ever taken in my life that didn't require breaking the law. And it paid off. The first 4 watches I sold paid for everything that I got out of that collection because I knew more about watches than the jackass that was selling them, because I had been reading about them and loving them my entire life. So I bought his collection for X amount of dollars, and the first 4 watches in that collection I sold, paid for all of it. And it was a lot of money. And I'm still selling off watches from that collection. Now, tax time just came, and I realized that I spent enough money on watches last year to buy a house in some parts of the country. They're not my watches, but I get to play with them all day. Is there something out there that you always wanted to do? Because I'm telling you, it's within your grasp. It really is. Unless you stay parked at base camp. Unless you leave that thing that you always wanted to do your entire life up here. If you put it down here, there isn't much on this planet you can't do. And I'm not being Tony Robbins. I'm telling you the friggin' truth. By the way, I love Tony Robbins. But when I say that, my point is, I'm not trying to be a motivational speaker here. I'm trying to tell you, as a 15-time felon, right? I think 13, 15 felonies. I don't know, a crap load of felonies that preclude me from doing a ton of different things. I could still be a public speaker. But a guy who took the only thing he knew how to do for a living at 50, threw it out the window to chase a dream, it can happen. But a dream had to become a goal. And you realize how much I wrote about watch business in this thing? That was my phone. If you had any idea, I filled 3 of these on how I was going to make that watch business go. Because it wasn't a pipe dream. It was a goal. And I'm not here to impress you with what I'm not. You understand what I'm doing? I'm telling you, if you can go from a friggin' bank robber to a business owner who also has a philanthropic goal in his life, like the lifeboat, then figure out what you want to do. Because if I can do this, people, not only I was more afraid of this thing than I was of a guy with a gun. I was more afraid of this thing than I was of walking into a bank and telling them I wanted all of the money. This was the most intimidating thing in the world to me. And now it's my best friend. If you're at base camp, it's time to put the car in at least first gear. You know what I mean? Neutral sucks. You cannot stay in neutral. I don't bag on any way that people get sober. I don't. At least I try not to. But I want to tell you something. I was forced to go to NA meetings. Right? Every single time I got in trouble, I was forced to go to NA meetings. And I relapsed in the parking lots of NA meetings. Both times I had any amount of time of sobriety, I relapsed in the parking lots because I was forced to go there. So were other people who had dope who didn't want to be there. But the ironic thing is this. I got in trouble and went to state prison, right? I think that was 2003, 2004, somewhere in there. And I got to know the people at NA pretty intimately in town because I had to go. I had to get my things signed and all of that. And I was still using, but I had to go there all the time. And I did. I went to tons and tons of meetings because I wanted to stay out of prison. And then I ended up back in prison, state joint. I mean, a federal prison the second time. So I get out of federal prison and I get told that I need to go to X number of meetings, blah, blah, blah. And I went in there and saw 20 people who were exactly where they were 15 years earlier. Exactly where they were. Nothing had changed in these people's lives. I'd say to them, so what are you doing? Oh, 10 meetings a month, 20 meetings a month. I'm like, no, in life, what are you doing, man? Oh, yeah, I'm still working, such and such. I'm washing dishes. I'm still over there at the bar. I'm still over there at wherever. And I would just look at these people and think, if you're content with that, that's great. But these people hadn't done anything other than get sober. You got 15 years of sobriety and you're still living in the same rental place you were when you were high, then you're probably not trying to do much. And I'm not trying to be a jerk. You can rent something for the rest of your life and be happy with it. But I have found across the board that as I watch people get sober, they would like to stop giving money away to people. And renting is giving away money to people, right? When you have a mortgage, you're stacking cash that you can do something with later in life, right? I would see these guys and I would say, there's a guy in particular who really jumps off the page because he lives in a place that is 300 yards from the club. I almost said the name of it. This place, it looks like a bar. You walk in the front door and there's a bar. They don't serve booze. On the left is NA. On the right is AA. It's a great concept. It really is. It's a great concept. Very cool building. It's open 24 hours a day, and there is a meeting every single hour of the day. The people that put this together really had a great idea. And then the courts flooded it with people that didn't want to be there. And the old timers, they're sitting at that bar. They're drinking energy drinks or they're drinking, smoothies or whatever. But there's one dude who lives 600 yards from there. And I've known him now 20 years of my life, 22 years of my life. He still hasn't got a vehicle. Because he's just content to be at base camp. He's content to just make sure that he doesn't ever get high again. That's surviving. You know what? I've never wanted to drop an F-bomb more on this show than I do right now. F surviving. That's not a life. It isn't. Surviving. If all I'm going to do is survive, then I'm going to get high so that I can realize, you know what I mean? So that I can buy happiness. Because survival, that's just what you're saying is, I really am powerless. I'm powerless, not just over my drug of choice, but over anything that I do in my life because it's going to drive me back to my drug of choice. So the only friggin' thing that I can do is go to 26 meetings a day, right? Literally sit in this place, attend every single meeting that they do all day long, walk 600 yards to my house, go to sleep, get up in the morning, come back and do it again. God bless them. I'd rather be dead. I want to suck every bit of joy out of this planet that I can before I leave. And the only thing standing between me and that would be a relapse. Would be me doing dope or me relapsing and not doing dope. Me parking my ass in neutral for the rest of my life. No chance. No chance. There are things I want to do. And you know what? There is a damn good chance that I'm not going to get them all done. But I'm not going to stop trying. If I were to show you my list of where I want to be in 5 years, a lot of you would laugh. For real. Because I've learned that if you really want to, you want to shoot for the moon, right? Then you shoot for Mars. And there's a decent shot you'll get to the moon. I set some pretty lofty goals for myself these days. But I have to catch up. Because I didn't set one friggin' goal for 46 years. Not one. You say, come on, Tommy. Of course, there had to be at least one goal. I mean, one. Not one goal. No, not one. Not in 46 years. Not one. Dreams, all kinds of them. I used to talk about them all the time. I started talking about doing this. It was just going to be called the Ounce of Prevention Foundation. I started talking about this 25 years ago with a needle in my arm telling my brother I was going to do this. True story. But I couldn't get off dope. I knew as a public speaker that I could probably articulate what it means to be a drug addict. I just couldn't get sober. And I felt a little bit like a hypocrite trying to talk to people about getting sober if I was getting high. Now, if there was a way I could have made money at the same time, I would have done it anyway. Because that hypocrisy was not really an issue for me until I was 46. Then it really became an issue. But for the first 46 years of my life, I did not have a goal. because I never picked up one of these. And without one of these, they're friggin' dreams. Pipe dreams. Pipe dreams. Pen to paper. Dreams become goals. So now I have a crap load of them. And I write down why I want that to happen in excruciating detail. And I don't want to do like a, what do they say? See, this is my brain, but they say, spoiler alert. There you go. Whew, man, I was groping for that. There's a spoiler alert. What do you think you do after you write down the goals and then you write down the why you want to do that? Like, we'll talk about me again. I want to get to 205 pounds. Why? Because I'm not healthy right now. And I'm at an age and the type of unhealthy that I am is going to shorten my life dramatically. So I can't keep on keeping on like this. That's the why. What do you think you do next? Spoiler alert, right? You write down the how. The how might change. But when I was writing down the fact that I had to get my health back under control, here comes the sun. Do-do-do-do. When I wrote down that I had to get my health and my weight under control because a friend of mine yesterday brought to my attention that we're two old farts and that we need to get ourselves back into shape if we want a better quality of life and a longer life. Well, when my friend brought that into my attention and I started writing down that I intended to fix this, I wrote down how. And I got out the push-up bars. Right? I got out the push-up bars. I got out my yoga mat, which literally will not sit on the floor because I've had it now wrapped up so long. I got to put it upside down. But I wrote down how I'm going to get what I want. If you don't write down how you intend to get it, it's still a pipe dream, even if you wrote it down on paper. What do you want? Why do you want it? How do you plan on getting it? Catch that? Here's the whole show. The rest of it's been filler. Didn't phone it in, but it's been filler. Got to give you guys enough time to talk to one another. But, what do you want? Why do you want it? How do you intend to get it? Here's the whole shooting match, peeps. What do you want? Why do you want it? How do you intend to get it? 30 days, 6 months, 1 year. 30 days, 6 months, 1 year. You take your goal, you split it down into increments. Why? Because it's intimidating as hell if you need to lose 150 pounds. Right? That looks like Everest. Holy crap, that looks like Everest. Okay, so where do you want to be in 30 days? On 30 days, I'd like to be 5 pounds lighter than I am. Yeah, there you go. You can bite off that chunk. And if you drop 5 pounds in 30 days, you hit your goal. But if you drop 10, now you start going, holy crap, I can do this. I can do this. Maybe 40 pounds in 6 months wasn't an ambitious enough goal. So you revamp it. What do you want? Why do you want it? And how do you want to get it? 30-day goal, 6-month goal, 1 year goal. And if you don't put a pen to paper today, then I suck at what I do, and you really don't want to leave base camp. And that is a cat in a basket. Look at that, huh? What a sweetie. He's a good kitty. No, she loves me. Either that or I smell like food. One or the other. Could go either way. Ugh. But since all I had this morning was coffee, I think she loves me. All right, peeps. Full of hope. I lost 95 pounds. Yeah, meds can do damage. Meds can absolutely blow you up. But you know what? Recap. Say it with me, people. Say it with me. What do you want? Why do you want it? What are you going to do to get it? 30-day goal, 6-month goal, 1 year. Write in that damn journal. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville. This is the Lifeboat. I love all of you. And I will see you in 11 hours. Eh?